Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining. Today, I want to talk to you about how to grow and win new revenue for a subscription-based business. What I want to share with you is some of the learnings that we have had at Chargebee in hopes that you guys will find benefit in that as well. So before we get into that, just want to tell you a little bit about Chargebee itself. We're a venture-backed company, raised about $25 million, 1.3 billion in TPV. We have customers in 53 countries around the world, about 230 plus employees, and 23 different payment gateways that we support in our platform. We're funded by Excel, Insight Ventures, and Tiger Global. Recently, G2 Crowd published a momentum for subscription management, and where you find us is in the top right-hand corner, well ahead of some of the other players who have specific offerings in the subscription management space. So Chargebee automates revenue operations for subscription-based businesses. We provide a subscription management platform called Chargebee Subscription Management Platform. It's an end-to-end solution from order to revenue. So you can manage all of those aspects of your business using our platform. One of the key things about our solution or in our offering is that it's very simple and easy to start with. It doesn't require an IT, it doesn't require a complex implementation, but it will grow with your business. It's a scalable model, it grows with your business. And today we have customers that have less than 1 million in revenue per year to companies that are generating over $100 million or well over $100 million in revenue, even thinking about going IPO as well. Today we have about 1,700 customers in those 53 countries. Here are some of those names. And so for today's conversation, I want to focus on some of the lessons that we learned, three lessons to be specific that we learned internally at Chargebee, as we try to grow our revenue. And I think it will be helpful to you guys as you think through your growth planning as well. First of all, what is so unique or what is so specific about the organizational design for a subscription-based company or a SaaS company? How is that different from a traditional business? Second, I want to talk about what are some of the levers that are available to us, whether this is customer adoption or expansion or retention or something else, and where should we focus our attention to? Where should we invest more, one versus the other? And then lastly, I want to share with you some of the key metrics that we measure internally to measure our profitability, and I hope that you'll find those useful for you as well. So, organizational design. When we look closely to our customers' lifecycle and their subscriptions, what we find is that it's very dynamic. Their needs are constantly changing, and they're demanding changes to their subscription all the time. Whether it's about adding new subscriptions or adding users to their existing subscriptions or removing users or changing their payment method, adding new services, downgrading, upgrading, so on and so forth. So there's constantly or always there's something going on that causes a change in the subscription because the customer's business is changing. So as you plan to offer these subscription services for them, you need to make sure that your model is dynamic as well, and it's dynamic to match the customer's life cycle. You need to be able to react to these requests in real time. So whether that means you generate a new invoice, issue a new code, change the payment method, or provision a new user, whatnot, you need to be able to make sure that your product, your offering, your solution to the customer is able to accommodate all those changes. So if you bring that back into the organization, What that boils down to is you need to make sure that your organization is properly aligned and enabled across all the stages of the customer lifecycle. That is sales, customer success, customer support, product operations, so on and so forth. Every touch point that you have with the customer, the teams that engage with them, they need to be aligned, they need to be working together, and they need to be empowered. So, and then it kind of goes from there into the processes and the systems that you build for your organization and for your customers. You need to make sure that as you develop your processes, as you adopt new systems, that these systems match the experience that you want to deliver to your customers. They need to be flexible, they need to be scalable. As the customer over their subscription lifecycle, they will demand these real-time changes from you. They will also ask you to measure them or track those changes. And you want to track them not only for your customers, but for your internal measurement as well. These changes could be in monetization, these could be in the life cycle. Regardless of what those changes are, they can have a significant impact on what you are measuring for your own business. So for example, it can change your MRR, but when you have some recurring charges that start to show up, or there's an upgrade or a downgrade, there may be a change in your churn or change in your retention rate, and so on and so forth. So as the customer's demand changes, as you make those changes, you need to be able to measure them, you need to be able to track them to get the true picture of your business. Next, let's jump to the business levers. So at Chargebee, there are 4 levers that we focus on, and we believe those are the key levers. First one is adoption. So not just selling our product, but we want to make sure that it's adopted by the customers. And what we find is that the more the product is adopted by the customer, the harder it is for a competitor to come in and displace you. So it's very important, not just from a competitive positioning perspective, but also want to make sure that the customer is getting value out of your product quickly. The second lever is around expansion. This is about getting new logos, getting new customers, driving your LTV higher. The third one is retention. So now you have the customers, you want to make sure you don't lose them. They don't churn out. There's not a leaky bucket. So you want to make sure you want to pay attention to that lever, and if you can manage it, you will be successful. And then the fourth one is pricing. We want to understand constantly. We want to understand what is the price for the product. Is the product priced at the right value in the market? And that will change over time, and you need to adjust. So we'll start with talking about adoption, expansion, and retention. And I want to talk about these 3 levers together because it's important to think about them collectively and measure them collectively in order to get a full picture. So as you get into a new market and the market matures, what you'll find is that the recurring revenue growth is going to start to flatten out. You want this desired rate of the green line, but as the market starts to mature, it's going to more flatten out, more look like the yellow line. Your customer acquisition rate is going to taper off after a while because there may be more competition. It may be the market is getting saturated, or other factors as well. So what do you do? I mean, the way you want to continue your revenue growth is by increasing or by maximizing your customer's lifetime value. If you increase your customer's lifetime value, you can maintain your revenue growth. So that's really where we want to focus on, is LTV. When you make the initial sale, that's only 30% of the revenue. 70% of the revenue will come from those customers after the initial sale. That is through upsell, through usage, through cross-sell, through renewal. So make sure that you continue to remain engaged with the customers, understand what they're doing, what their needs are, and so on and so forth, and you can drive your revenue higher. So if you increase your LTV, you can increase your addressable market, or you can maximize your addressable market. As we see it, it's 6 times less expensive to sell it to existing customers versus buying or acquiring a new customer. Now on the chart, if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, what you see is that at the initial sale, you have this value or this price revenue coming from the customer, and it's going to stay flat if they continue to renew from you. What you want to think about, what you want to strategize for is how do you drive the adoption, right? Again, the higher the adoption of the product within the customer, the harder it is for them to churn. They'll stick around longer. They'll find more value in the product as well, and they'll be happier customers. Another opportunity for you is to find upsells. Can you upsell add-ons or enhanced features or advanced features to them? And then cross-sell, especially if your company has multiple products, can they use some of your other products as well? So that's another opportunity for you to drive your LTV higher. And then as companies, more and more companies are starting to offer usage-based pricing. That's another area where you can drive your LTV higher, and it's a really good way to do this because this ties to the customer success, to the customer outcome. So the more they use your product, the more you drive revenue from them. And so that means that they are successful, and therefore you are successful as well. Now, if you can improve your retention rate by 10%, you can increase your company's valuation by up to 30%. And for those of us who are constantly looking to raise new funds, this is an important metric for us to track. It's important for our board. And our investors. So make sure that you pay attention to the retention. Make sure you don't lose your customers, that you have spent a lot of effort and time to acquire them in the first place. So going back to that organizational design specific to the SaaS organizations, here what we want to make sure is that the success and the support team are empowered to engage in sales activities when the customers interact with them. After the initial sale, that's the most common point of interaction for the customers. This is where you can understand the issues that the customers are having with your product or other problems that they're trying to solve internally. You can understand what their growth is and so on and so forth. So this is a really good touch point with the customer. And if your success team or your sales team is able to sell them, great time to upsell or possibly even cross-sell to these customers. And then it also actually gives you a great opportunity to understand who are your heavy users and who are your light users. And that goes into the exercise of pricing, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on, is you need to be able to measure is who are you charging more? Are your heavy users being charged more, or your light users being charged more? What you can do to address this sort of tension between acquisition, retention, and expansion is that we tie your business activities to maximizing LTV. So meaning whatever business activities, marketing activities, sales activities that you're doing, track how it's improving your LTV. So it's really important for you to look at adoption, expansion, and retention together and not in isolation, because then it will actually give you a better picture of how successful you are and how profitable you are. Now, typically, you will hear this ratio of LTV to CAC should be greater than 3:1, but it really depends. And I'll talk a little bit about towards the end of the presentation is that it depends on the stage you are in as a company, where the market is, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a study that was done by one of our partners, Profitwell, and what they found is that the impact on the revenue from activities for expansion and retention of the customers is about 30%, whereas from new acquisition or acquisition is about 4%. Again, sort of going back to the point of, yes, it's important to get new customers, yes, it's important to gain market share, but the maximum value that you can drive is by growing your existing customers. Now, in a subscription business, what you'll find is that typically at any given time, you have about 13% of your subscribers that are up for renewal. Right? This is a great opportunity to retain the revenue or lose it. I've seen in many companies where they have a lot of manual processes for managing their subscription that they lose track. They don't reach out to the customer, the renewal windows opportunities are lost, and so on and so forth. And they can lose up to 10 to 20% of their revenue just because they did not have automated systems to remind the customers to renew their subscription, and so on and so forth. So this is an easy fix. You can automate your processes and don't have to worry about it. If you rely on Excel spreadsheets and manual engagement with the customers, there's always a chance that you're losing some revenue just because a renewal came up and it was not renewed on time. Some of the other things that you can do to drive your growth in revenue is think about, is there an opportunity for you to launch a new product or multiple products? Do you have a strategy in place to launch upsell opportunities? So are there add-ons that you're creating in your product? Are there cross-sell opportunities for you? So you need to come up with that plan. Similarly, think about adding consumption-based pricing. That's certainly an area where you can grow and tie to the success of the customer and shift your organization's focus around the customer as well. It's an easy way to do that. And then certainly new geographies. New markets, new geographies is an area you can expand there, and that can drive growth into your revenue. And as you're doing this, you need to make sure your sales teams are growing as well. But I just want to remind all of us is that you need to build your sales teams ahead of time, because there is a lag between hiring a sales person or a team and for them to ramp up. So whatever your plan is for revenue growth for this year, make sure you work backwards to start building your sales team in time so that you can hit your targets. And similarly, you can expand into adjacent markets by, for example, introducing self-service and go down market, or introducing enterprise package pricing or offerings to go up market. Let's talk about the last lever, or the fourth lever, which is pricing and packaging. Now, we all know, and I just want to use this as a reminder for all of us, is that customers don't buy what we sell. They buy what they find value in, right? So we want to make sure that our product shows value to them. Now, many companies, when they start, they come up with, many times they will come up with a flat price for all. And this may be okay for early stage companies because you're just trying to acquire customers at that point. This has some shortcomings, right? If you look at the chart on the right side, you see that yellow product value curve. And what you see here is that on the left-hand side, you have customers that use your product extensively. They find a lot of value in your product, but what they're paying is that green line at the bottom. They'll be more than happy to pay you more for your product because the value they get is more. So the fact that you're not charging them that additional price is that you're losing that potential revenue. Now, on the right-hand side of the chart, what you see is that the customers are light users of the product. They only use some specific features or functionality, and they don't find enough value in the product based on the price that you're charging. Meaning they think that it's more expensive than the value that they derive from it. And so either they won't come to you, or if they come to you, you will lose them to churn. So you want to manage both sides of this. And the way you do it is by shifting your thinking from selling products to delivering outcomes. So if you think about the outcomes that the customers will get out of your product, that would be the right way to think about this. It will also help you understand what are the right target markets that you want to focus on, and what your value distribution curve looks like. At that point, you can start to create packages. You can create a basic or a core package that has a mass appeal. It applies to most of your customers, and then you create add-ons on top of that. Now, for your customers on the right, they still find value in it. They have the features that they need. They don't pay a lot of price for it. But for the customers on the left who are complex users or advanced users of your product, they're more than happy to buy the add-ons and pay extra price for it. And you have this one single product with the right set of packaging that will fit their needs as well, and you're getting the right value of your product as well. As you do this, as you start to measure your pricing, you want to make sure your messaging is aligned to the new thinking as well, which that means is understand what are the key drivers and through which they find the value in the product, or what's the value for the customer, and then message to that, not message to the product or the pricing. Now, as we do this, as we go and come up with this new pricing, it's not a one-time exercise. You have to continue to measure it, because the value that your product offers to the customers will continue to change. As you add new capabilities in your product, your value is going to increase. As new competition comes in or market conditions change, the value of your product may decrease. So it's important for you to continuously measure it and continuously tweak it, because your price does not need to remain the same. And just to prove the point, or give some examples of companies, very successful companies who have experimented and changed their prices over time. And what we find is that those companies who actually change their pricing on a regular basis are more successful than those who don't. So this is an example of HubSpot. What you see here on the left-hand side is their initial pricing, fairly complex, a big matrix of different pricing options that you have available. And then later on, what they did is they cleaned up that, came up with 3 simple packages. But what they also did is also define those packages more clearly and increase the price for their Pro and their Enterprise versions. Later on, they didn't change the price, but what they started to focus on is what is the package that they want to drive the customers to. So that's the Pro package. So they have clear call to actions to that particular package. They're recommending that package to their customers. But what they did in addition to this is they introduced onboarding charges. So now this is an add-on that they started to offer. There's 2 benefits to this. One, the obvious one is it drives more revenue for HubSpot. But more importantly, what it does is it makes sure that the customers are onboarded properly, and they start to draw value out of the product quickly. Because if the customer self-onboards, there's a chance that they don't do it properly. There's a chance that they're not using the product correctly, and therefore they won't find the value in it, or at least not quickly enough. So by offering this, they're getting twice the bang for the buck. Now, just more recently, they changed their prices again. Now you see they added a starter package, which is free. and then they reduced their basic pricing and called it starter, and then while they did not change their professional pricing, but they significantly increased their enterprise package pricing. And this is probably because as the product, the HubSpot product has matured, they can handle a lot more complex scenarios, and it's more applicable and valuable to the enterprises, and therefore they can demand higher prices for it. Similarly, Chargebee has gone through a number of iterations of their pricing as well. We started with 10 invoices free and then moved on to $49 per month. And then over the years, as our product has matured, as we have started to add more functionality into our product, we've been able to increase our price successfully, and customers are continue to be happy with what we are charging them for. Now here is iteration number 5 and 6. On the right-hand side is the most recent pricing that we have on our website today. I want to share with you one more example, and that is of Netflix. Certainly, I mean, they have been very successful, but what we find is that they have, over the years, they have changed their pricing a number of times. When they first introduced the idea of changing the price, the analysts predicted that they may have up to 41% churn in their customer base. And what they actually found, or what they actually measured, was it was somewhere between 3 to 4%. But at the same time, their revenue grew by 112%, their ARPU grew, their subscriptions grew as well. And if you map it to their stock chart, what we see is that there is no significant dip in their pricing, and they continue to increase, so they continue to be successful. Now, as they start to add new capabilities like 4K video and so on and so forth, what we see is they are able to demand higher value for their services. Now, what is the right price for your product? There's only one way to find out, is through experimentation. It is okay to change your price frequently, right? As long as you understand the value that your product is delivering to the customer, you can change the price, you can measure it. If it's not right, change it again. So last topic, last lesson is what to measure. So in Chargebee, this is the dashboard from the Chargebee subscription management platform. These are the metrics that are important for a subscription business. So now what you see here, it's different from a traditional business. What we're measuring is, what is important for a subscription-based business is things like MRR, new monthly recurring revenue, or expansion MRR, or the churn in the MRR. Similarly, how many new customers you acquired, what's the churn of those customers, what's the ARPU of those customers. So it's things like those that you need to measure. And the revenue story dashboard within Chargebee, it looks at your transactions, it looks at your customer subscriptions, and it automatically generates this information for you in real time. Now, so there are a number of metrics that you can measure for your SaaS business. And if you go look it up on the internet, you'll find a slew of them. I chose a few of those that are important for us at Chargebee. We track them, we measure them very regularly, and I believe those you'll find them valuable as well. And if you're starting new on measuring these metrics, my recommendation would be to pick a few, start with those, make sure the entire organization understands what are we measuring, why are we measuring it, and once you get there, then add more. If you start, on the other hand, if you start with a lot of metrics, it's going to be too many moving parts, it's going to be too complicated to understand, and it'll just make the job harder. So start small, build on it. One last thing that I want to share with you is around CAC. We talked a little bit earlier about that magic number of 3-to-1 ratio for LTV to CAC, but we have to understand, and it's important for you to communicate it to your management and to your leadership and the board, is why is the CAC changing? CAC will change based on the stage of the company that you're at. If you're trying to go find your product market fit, you may have to spend a lot of money to acquire customers initially, and so your CAC will go up. And as you mature, you find the product fit, you know where to sell, what channels to sell it through, your CAC should start to come down. And then as new entrants and new competitors come into the market matures, your CAC may go up because your customer base may get saturated. So it's important to understand what's the stage you are in as a company, what's the stage your product is at, what's going on with the market out in some external factors and so on and so forth, and then measure the CAC relative to that. So with that, just kind of some takeaways for us is that 70% of your revenue from the customer will come after the initial sale. So make sure you stay close to the customer, make sure you understand how their needs are changing, and be able to serve them and be able to help them with those changes. And remember, it's 6 times cheaper to sell to the existing customer than to acquire a new customer. Make sure your pricing is correct, which means experiment, continue to experiment, right? And continue to fine tune your pricing until you get to the right pricing, but then it will change over a period of time, and then you need to find the new right price. And then lastly is if you haven't done it yet, when you get to the right stage, you may want to think about adding usage-based charges. This is a good way to align your success to your customer success. It makes the customer much more important within your organization, and the customer actually feels a lot more value from your product because as they are successful, they're happy to pay more for using your product. With that, I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you as a customer. Some of the things that we talked about around revenue operations and automation of those revenue operations, we can help you do that very quickly and very easily through our platform. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.